I'm Alicia Drury, 27 years old, and for a long time I believed I understood what embarrassment felt like. I thought it was the kind of mild sting you get when you trip in public or mispronounce someone's name. But that belief shattered the night my boyfriend Callum turned an engagement party into a spotlight for his own chaos and dragged me into the center of it. Callum was 25, charming, magnetic, and beautiful in that curated social media friendly way. 11,000 followers adored his lifestyle content, sunlit coffee photos, gym selfies, angled for maximum jawline outfits. He captioned with inspirational quotes. He knew exactly how to gather attention. I just never realized how much he depended on it. We'd been together 2 years when the party happened, an outdoor venue strung with fairy lights that blurred softly against the dusk. About 80 people milled around, enjoying the evening. For a while, it felt perfect light music, small laughter, that hopeful buzz engagement parties always have. I was talking to the groom's sister about her new job when Callum suddenly appeared beside me. 3 drinks deep, I could smell the citrus vodka as he leaned in far too close. "There you are," he said, voice sharp enough to slice the moment in half. "Of course you're talking about boring stuff." I introduced him, trying to smooth over his tone, but Callum rolled his eyes like I'd dragged him into something offensive. Then, without warning, "We need to leave, now." I blinked. "Callum, we got here an hour ago." "I don't care. Derek's here." Derek, his ex-best friend. The one he'd accused of stealing a brand partnership 6 months ago. Ever since they'd been firing not-so-subtle subtweets at each other, like 2 people arguing from opposite rooftops. I'd hoped they'd avoid one another tonight. So I tried reason, then just avoid him. That was the spark. Callum's voice detonated loud enough for conversations around us to falter. "You never support me. You don't understand what he did to me. You're supposed to be on my side." People stopped talking. The music kept playing, but the dance floor froze. I felt dozens of eyes shift toward us as Callum's gestures grew more dramatic, his voice rising with each accusation. "You think I'm being dramatic. You think I'm crazy." "Callum, please." "Don't." "Callum, please me." I'm done explaining myself to people who don't get it. Then he threw his drink, not directly at me, but onto the ground. The splash arced upward, spraying across the bride-to-be's dress like a cruel brushstroke. Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. I apologized. Immediately. Mortified, guiding him toward the exit while he swung between sobbing apologies and blaming me for making him look psycho. The drive home felt like hours. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. Callum had tweeted, "If she can't handle me at my worst, she doesn't deserve me at my best." 47 retweets, nearly 900 likes. Comments like, "Period. Men always want us to shrink ourselves. Normalize not dimming your light for insecure partners." People who had no idea what had actually happened were cheering him on. I stared at the tweet for a long time. My embarrassment simmered into something steadier, heavier. Exhaustion. A strange clarity. Then I retweeted it with 2 simple words. "You're right." And I blocked him. Everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, phone, email. A full digital door slam. The calls started immediately. Unknown numbers, his friends, his sister, even one of his brand contacts. I turned my phone off and went to sleep with a strange, quiet finality humming in my chest. The next morning, I walked into my office lobby, and there he was, perfectly styled. Hair designer, bag, composed. Expression. No trace of the chaos from the night before. "We need to talk about what you did," he snapped. "Callum, please leave. You humiliated me. Do you know how many people saw that contacts from my partnerships are asking questions? Your brand contacts." "Yes." The agency called and 3 of my collaborators DM'd, asking if we broke up. "You're affecting my income, Alicia." I looked at him, really looked. That polished version of Callum he reserved for the camera had returned like nothing had happened. But I remembered the screaming, the drink, the dress, the silence afterward. "You screamed at me in public," I said. "You ruined someone's engagement party, but I'm the problem." "That was different. That was private. There were 80 people there. They're not my audience. My followers are, and you made me look crazy to them." "I agreed with you, Callum. You said I don't deserve you at your best." I agreed. His face twisted through confusion, anger, realization, and then a deeper anger. "Take it down." "No. Take it down or I'll—" "You'll what?" He froze. For the first time in 2 years, Callum had nothing to say. Security escorted him out eventually. But I had no idea that moment wasn't the end. It was the quiet breath before the real storm arrived. I thought blocking Callum would end things. I thought silence would finally give me space to breathe. Instead, it only handed him a stage, and he performed like the whole world was his audience. It started 1 week after the retweet. Callum resurrected himself online with a 15-tweet thread, accusing me of emotional manipulation, narcissistic abuse, and something he dramatically labeled digital domestic violence. He claimed blocking him had isolated him from his support system as if the people cheering him on were a medical team, and I had unplugged the life support. He even used those exact words, digital domestic violence. The internet ate it up. My retweet jumped from 50 likes to 8,000 in a day, not because of anything I did, but because people from the engagement party guests who had seen the chaos firsthand started quote tweeting things like, "Is this about what I think it's about? Wait, didn't he throw a drink?" Here we go again. Old videos surfaced shaky phone clips of Callum's previous meltdowns. A roommate from 2 years ago posted, "Oh, you have no idea," with a prayer hands emoji. Then the bride-to-be uploaded the dress cleaning bill, tagging him. Callum doubled down. He posted a teary TikTok claiming I had weaponized the internet against him. 6 hours, 100,000 views. Sobbing into the camera, insisting he was being mobbed by haters. And then everything got weird. First, my landlord called. Someone reported me for illegally running a business out of my apartment. Then my gym emailed me saying my membership was canceled per my request, which I hadn't made. 3 food delivery orders I didn't place arrived at my office. One driver angrily insisted, "Ma'am, you did order this." Another looked nervous and asked if I lived alone. That was when the cold realization hit me. Callum was inconveniencing me into submission. Small, relentless hits. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. But the thing about screens is that they always keep receipts. I began documenting everything, the false reports, the unwanted deliveries, screenshots of every account involved, not out of spite, but survival. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Rachel Callum's mother. "Alicia, honey, what is going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Callum's locked himself in his apartment. He won't eat. He says you ruined his life." I closed my eyes. I liked Rachel. She was one of the few steady people in his orbit. I told her the truth, the screaming, the thrown drink, the harassment, the fear that this might escalate. A long pause. "Oh, well, that explains the credit card charges," she murmured. "What charges?" "Alicia, he's been ordering things to random addresses. Food flowers, and good Lord, a mime." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Who orders a mime, Rachel?" "He's spiraling," she whispered. "Please don't ignore this. He needs help." "I know," I said softly. "I'll handle what I can." 2 days later, Callum's entire digital footprint went silent. No TikTok rants, no cryptic quotes, no threads, nothing. Radio silence. For a few hours, I actually believed it was over. But while Callum disappeared, Victor, his best friend and self-appointed social media soldier, did not. Victor ran a YouTube channel with 200,000 subscribers, mostly commentary videos. When his face appeared on my feed with the title, "My best friend's ex is stalking him, a deep dive," my stomach dropped. 45 minutes of selective screenshots, misdirection, sob stories, and dramatic music swells. He showed my retweet, but conveniently not Callum's original tweet. He talked about me blocking him, but not the engagement party meltdown. He spliced clips together in a way that made it look like Callum was the victim of some elaborate plot. The comment section was full of fire emojis and threats. "Someone like her shouldn't be allowed online. She's unwell. Protect Callum at all costs." But Victor made one critical mistake. In a montage meant to show how stressed Callum had been lately, he included a 2-second blurry clip from the engagement party. You couldn't see much, just a flash of motion, the sound of yelling, the faint arc of liquid flying through the air. He probably thought it was harmless. He had no idea it would become the thread that unraveled everything. That clip was about to shift the entire narrative in a way neither Callum nor Victor ever anticipated. And it was only the beginning. Victor's blurry 2-second clip should have been nothing. Just background chaos in a montage of Callum sighing into his ring light. But the internet has a way of sharpening shadows. By that evening, someone had enhanced the audio. Someone else had slowed the frame rate, and within hours, a full video surfaced. Not from one angle, not from one guest, but a supercut stitched together from 6 different phones, each catching a different part of the blow-up at the engagement party. Callum screaming about Derek, me trying to calm him, his voice cracking with rage. The arc of the drink unmistakably intentional in its dramatic flourish. The bride's strangled gasp when her dress was soaked. My repeated apologies, my hand guiding him out as he shouted over me. There was no room for interpretation, no editing tricks, no ambiguity. The clip spread like wildfire. The phrase digital domestic violence, Callum's preferred dagger, trended again, but this time people were using it to mock him. Comments flooded in. So, this was the private meltdown. That poor bride. He threw a drink and called her abusive. I thought this guy was a minimalist, but apparently he's full of drama. Someone auto-tuned his scream. 2 million views on TikTok. Memes, parodies, duets. The internet did what it does best. It turned pain into entertainment. Victor panicked. He uploaded a follow-up video insisting the engagement party meltdown was taken out of context, that Callum was having a panic attack, and that I had failed to support him emotionally. It didn't work, because that was the moment Derek, formerly Deborah, now the ex-best friend Callum had accused of stealing a brand partnership, entered the battlefield. And Derek did not come empty-handed. He posted a thread with emails showing Callum trying to sabotage his opportunities. Screenshots of Callum using fake accounts to leave negative reviews on Derek's content. A recorded phone call of Callum admitting he lied to brands about him. Proof that the stolen partnership was actually offered to Derek after Callum showed up 2 hours late and drunk to the first photo shoot. Callum's online persona didn't just crack, it collapsed. His follower count plummeted from 11K to 6K in 48 hours. Brands quietly cut ties. A few not so quietly posted statements distancing themselves from him. Then Callum made what would become his most infamous mistake. He returned to Twitter with a Notes app apology. It started predictably. I've been doing a lot of reflecting. This isn't who I am. Mental health is so important. But he couldn't resist adding, while I take accountability for my actions, I'm disappointed my ex chose to publicly humiliate me instead of handling this privately. It was like he'd thrown gasoline onto already burning resentment. I had kept silent through everything. I hadn't responded to a single post. But this backhanded apology, masquerading as reflection, required an answer. So I wrote my own thread. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't embellish. I simply laid out the facts of the past 2 years. The restaurant meltdowns, the barista he made cry, the shattered phone he threw at a wall because I didn't like his Instagram post fast enough. The nights he insisted I was unsupportive for not engaging with every piece of his content, the engagements he ruined, the apologies I'd made on his behalf, the isolation he created with his cycles of drama and silence. Each incident included dates, times, witnesses tagged, no commentary, just facts. And then the kicker, the security footage. My office building keeps records of everyone entering the lobby. Crystal clear video captured Callum demanding I delete the retweet, threatening me, and finally being escorted out by security. I ended with, I didn't humiliate you publicly, Callum. You did that yourself. I only agreed with you. That line spread faster than everything else combined. Within an hour, Rachel, his mother, called me in tears. Alicia, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was this bad. We're getting him into therapy. Real therapy this time. Real therapy. Not the kind he'd quit after one session because the therapist didn't understand my brand. But the fallout didn't stop at apologies. The bride, still angry about her ruined engagement dress, filed a small claims lawsuit against Callum, won $200 for cleaning and emotional distress. When the court hearing came, Callum tried to countersue me for defamation. The judge watched the viral compilation for less than 5 minutes, then dismissed his claim with the driest voice imaginable. Mr. Callum, that video speaks for itself. He left the courtroom shaking. And I watched something I never expected, the beginning of Callum's unraveling. Not the dramatic, fiery kind he was used to performing, but the slow, quiet collapse of someone who'd built his life out of mirrors and was finally seeing a reflection he couldn't control. But the strange thing was, he wasn't done reinventing the narrative. Not even close. 3 months passed after the engagement party disaster, 2 months since the internet meltdown, 1 month since I'd heard anything directly from Callum. Most people would disappear after a public collapse, that dramatic go offline, regroup, maybe start therapy for real. But Callum did what Callum always did. He pivoted. When he resurfaced, it wasn't on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. He came back on OnlyFans, rebranded, not as a lifestyle influencer, but as a mental health warrior and survivor of public shaming. He posted thirst traps with captions like, "Finding strength in vulnerability, healing one day at a time, rise above the hate." And people paid for it. A lot of people. Turns out infamy converted better than his curated Matcha Flat Lay content ever did. Alongside his reinvention, Victor doubled down too. He made video after video defending Callum 20 minutes here, 40 minutes there, turning our breakup into a serialized saga about cancel culture, mob mentality, and the so-called cruelty of women who weaponize social media to destroy men. He called me calculating, manipulative, a master strategist of online shaming. In their story, I became a villain so meticulous I could have run an intelligence agency, a digital puppeteer pulling strings, a woman who engineered the entire meltdown by anticipating exactly how Callum would behave. According to Victor's analysis, I strategically chose the engagement party, knowing Callum would explode. I baited him by talking to the groom's sister. I waited for the right moment to retweet. I orchestrated the avalanche. Apparently, I was a genius playing 4D chess while working a normal 9 to 5 and trying not to cry into my instant noodles. Meanwhile, the actual truth was so simple it almost felt unremarkable. I was tired of the screaming, tired of apologizing for him, tired of being painted as the villain in a story I wasn't even trying to be in. My retweet wasn't revenge, it wasn't strategy, it was resignation. But the internet didn't want quiet truth, it wanted spectacle. And Victor and Callum gave it to them, producing their own dramatic universe where he was the fallen angel and I was the serpent. The irony was almost poetic. As the noise around them kept growing, my own life became quieter. I stayed off social media except for work. I went to therapy, a real therapist, not the kind Callum dismissed for failing to align with his brand. I took walks in the evenings, cooked more, read books that hadn't been touched in months. Normalcy felt strange at first, like silence after years of background static. But every few days, someone would send me a clip from Victor's newest video, or a screenshot of Callum claiming he was healing from emotional abuse, perpetrated by someone who should have loved him. It was bizarrely surreal watching a version of me that didn't exist being dissected by strangers who had never met me. It was like attending my own trial with evidence pulled from thin air and a jury comprised of usernames with anime profile pictures. Still, I didn't respond, not once, because the truth had already spoken for itself. Everyone who mattered had seen the meltdown, the receipts, the security footage. Nothing Victor crafted could erase what people had already witnessed. But then something happened that even I wasn't prepared for. Callum began telling a new story, one in which he wasn't just hurt, he was ruined by me. He claimed I had destroyed his chances at long-term success, that I'd maliciously dismantled his reputation, that my thread weaponized the collective wrath of the internet. He painted a world where he could have been a rising star if only I hadn't stood in the way. And the saddest part was that he seemed to believe it. He clung to the narrative the way someone clings to debris after a shipwreck. I saw in him something I hadn't recognized before. He didn't just want attention. He didn't just want sympathy. He wanted a villain so badly he would reshape reality to create one. And the more I stayed silent, the more powerful his imagination became. Meanwhile, my life kept inching forward, slowly, uneventfully, blessedly. But the story wasn't finished. Because fate, or the universe's dark sense of humor, had one last twist left. One message, from someone I never expected to hear from. A woman named Alexandra, Callum's ex before me. And everything I thought I knew was about to take on an entirely different shape. The message arrived on a random Wednesday afternoon. A simple, "Hi, Alicia. This might sound strange, but I wanted to thank you. Alexandra." I stared at her name for a long moment. Callum had talked about her constantly, always in the way people talk about shadows they swear they've outrun. According to him, Alexandra was toxic, emotionally cold, obsessed with controlling him, unsupportive, and jealous of his success. In his stories, she was the villain who didn't understand him. I never fully believed him, but I also never questioned him out loud. Not back then. When Alexandra asked to meet for coffee, curiosity defeated hesitation. She arrived wearing a soft gray coat, hair tied back, eyes calm in a way that suggested she'd walk through storms and learn to live with the rain. She wasn't at all the person Callum had described. In fact, she looked like someone who had learned to rebuild herself quietly with intention. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "I saw your thread," she said, "and the videos, and the fallout. I'm sorry you went through that." I expected anger about being dragged back into Callum's history, maybe discomfort. Instead, Alexandra simply looked relieved, as if someone had finally switched on the lights in a room she'd stumbled through for years. "He had me convinced I was the problem," she said softly. "I was in therapy twice a week thinking I was some sort of narcissist. But when I saw what he did to you, the patterns were exact. The meltdowns, the public scenes, The way he rewrote everything online, even the same accusations. I exhaled not sharply, not dramatically, but with a long, deep release I hadn't realized my chest had been holding. It was surreal sitting across from someone who had lived the same nightmare years before I ever stepped into it. Our experiences lined up like parallel timelines, two versions of the same story told by the same unreliable narrator. We compared notes. He would say things like, "You don't support my dreams, right?" she asked. I nodded. Or, "You don't understand my vision." She laughed genuinely, almost with disbelief. He said that exact sentence to me. Exact wording. There was no vindictiveness in her expression. Just recognition, understanding. A shared exhaustion that hovered between us like smoke finally clearing. "You didn't destroy him," she said gently. "You just stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own behavior." Her words landed with a weight I wasn't prepared for. Because for months, despite everything he'd done, some quiet part of me still wondered if I had gone too far, if silence had somehow been cruel. It's ridiculous, but when someone has spent years twisting your reality, even the truth begins to feel sharp and dangerous in your hands. Alexandra squeezed my hand. "You helped me heal," she said. Seeing the truth laid out so clearly, it finally made me understand it wasn't me. We talked for nearly 2 hours, not about Callum, but about surviving him, about learning to trust again, about the strange, hollow ache that comes from untangling yourself from someone who loved the spotlight more than the relationship. When we finally stood to leave, she hugged me. A quiet, grateful embrace between two women who had both learned the hard way that being cast as the villain doesn't make you one. As weeks passed, life settled into something less dramatic. I kept going to therapy. I began dating slowly, carefully, with the understanding that trust now had to be earned gently, not demanded loudly. The retweet, "You're right," stayed online. Sometimes I thought about deleting it, letting the whole ordeal die quietly. But then I'd remember the bride's ruined dress, the barista who cried, Derek's sabotaged partnership, Alexandra's years of silent self-blame, every apology I had made to shield a grown man from the consequences of his choices. No, the tweet stayed. Not as revenge, not as a weapon, but as a small digital monument to the danger of believing your own hype and the power of finally stepping out of someone else's distorted story. Every so often, Rachel Callum's mother texted me. Updates about him, apologies layered with regret, hopes that I was doing well. And I was. Not amazing, not euphoric, not living some grand cinematic redemption arc. Just, well, turns out well is enough when you've spent years drowning in chaos. Then one day, the bride from the engagement party followed me on Instagram. She posted a photo of her wedding dress, pristine, shining. No champagne stains in sight, and tagged me with, "Thanks for the drama content. Made the wedding speeches unforgettable." I laughed. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel bitter or tired. Just real. And that was my ending. Not triumphant, not poetic, not tied with a moral bow. Just life messy, ongoing, imperfect, and finally quiet.